I'm going to tell another one of my African travel stories. And by way of introduction, I just want to say a few words of why I have this great fascination with Africa. It really started when I was pretty young. Um, I was a tropical fish hobbyist, and after I'd done the guppies and live plants and all of that, the first fish that I got really interested in and somewhat expert with were African cichlids from the Great Lakes called bumbuna. And they're from primarily it was Lake Malawi and Tanganyika and Lake Victoria. And I remember as a pretty young kid getting out the Encyclopedia Britannica and looking up the rift lakes. And that's really where my fascination started. Later on, when I had moved to Boston at the age of 17, I found a remainder book at the Barnes & Noble downtown Crossing called The Tree Where Man Was Born. There's the book here. I picked it up for about $6 and has text by Peter Matheson and photos by Elliot Porter. And initially I just looked at the photos, but there were photos like that. And I started dreaming about going there someday. And so when I finally got the chance and started doing my research, I kind of used this book as part of the jumping off point of where to go. And so when I was doing research, I found that most African travel is geared towards people with pretty high budgets who want a complete guided experience, and they'll often fly from park to park and stay at the lodges at a cost from anywhere from $400 to $1,500 a night. And that's just not my preferred mode of travel. I like to get involved in the culture, get my toes in the dirt, so to speak. And so when I was researching on where to go, one thing that caught my eye was that there was an opportunity to go for a trek in the Ngorongoro Highlands. So on about the third day of my trip there, I had spent the day primarily in the Ngorongoro crater, where there's a very large concentration of animals, and it's paradise for somebody who wants to take pictures of animals, ride around in a vehicle and do that. And at the end of the day, we went to a Maasai village, a special campground there called the village's Nino Kanoka. And it's right at the base of Omotli volcano, Omotli crater or caldera. And so once we got there, after a full day of photography, I met my Maasai guide who would be taking me on the trek for the next 4 days. And we were to climb to the top of this, the rim of the caldera. I was pretty tired at this point, and it seemed like it was going to rain. I could hear some thunder, and it was clouding up. So I wasn't extremely enthusiastic, but I put on my raincoat, didn't bother with rain pants, decided I'm not going to bother with the camera either at that point. And we left camp with one other person, one of the people involved with the tour company that I was working with. And she had made a raincoat out of a plastic bag and was wearing tennis shoes. And about 5 minutes after we started, it started to rain. And the very fine, silty, volcanic soil immediately turned to mud. And Renalda decided she was done. And she went back to camp. But Alex, my guide, and I kept going. And as we went, we started climbing up a fairly steep slope. And given that I live at sea level and I'm now at significant elevation, I started sounding like a locomotive. And I could see Alex was a little concerned. He asked me if I wanted to rest. And I said, no, I just need to just keep going slowly. And we kept going up. And about 10 minutes later, the rain had petered out. And we were standing in a beautiful forest, and I felt like I had just walked into the pages of of the tree where man was born. And it just hit me that here I was, after dreaming about this for almost 40 years, more than 40 years, that I was there. And I was just overcome with emotion. Could not say a word. And Alex, my guide, was explaining that the Maasai use this tree for medicine for wounds, and they use this tree to make bedding out of, and which was good because I couldn't say anything. And we went up to the top, and from the top you get a view out over the whole expanse of the caldera, the collapsed volcano, and it's green, and their Maasai have their cattle and their goats there, and you can hear the tinkling of the bells of the cattle in the distance, and there was a waterfall nearby, and it was just spectacular. And of course, this young man, about my son's age, named Alex, has guided me there, and this is in my mind as well. And tears just started coming down my face. And Alex saw me, and he says that it has stopped raining. Why is your face wet? And of course, I couldn't say much of anything about that. And the whole way down, I was choked up. I couldn't get a word out. We got to the bottom, and Alex said to me, "I can take you back to your tent at the campsite now, or if you would like, I could take you to my village and show you around." So, what do you think? I'd say, of course. I went to the village. So Alex and I are walking to Nainokanoka, and we're having a conversation. I asked him about his spear, and he explained to me how you have to get the right metal for the spear, and you have to find the right guy to make the spear if you want a good spear. And we got to the economic aspects of it, and he told me how many cattle you would pay for a spear, and then I tried to figure out how many cattle to buy a car, so that I could get some idea of the exchange rate between cattle. And then I talked a little bit about being at mountaineering camp and hiking. I guess we were talking about Everest, so I was talking about mountaineering camp and hiking in snow, which he called the white stuff. He wanted to know how you could walk in the white stuff, so I explained how that was done to him, and I guess he found it interesting. And we got to his village, and he started showing me around. He showed me the school that he had gone to, and explained how their schooling works, and showed me some shops and things. And then we went by the pool hall, and there was some young Maasai loitering, for lack of a better term, around the pool, and they beckoned me over. They wanted me to join in and maybe play a game of pool. And for some of you know that I grew up with a pool table, and I thought I probably had a pretty fair chance of making some money. But then I thought about it a little more and realized that might not be a real good idea to clean these guys out, since they all had spears. So I declined the game of pool. I'll save my hustling days for another time. And Alex took me back to my campsite, and that was the end of my first day trek. So I'm going to split this up and tell the story of this trek in several segments so it doesn't get too long. Hope you enjoy it. Hope you'll stick with me for part 2.